No.
Well, I read it years ago. I don't think there's when I was writing, but I remember liking this. And I don't know why in fourth grade or fifth grade, and I think I'm getting it to read, but I want to reread it, see how bad it is, because it was good for sixth grade, but
Gotcha.
I'm not sure.
Now, are you a one-book at a time or multiple books?
One at a time, but right now I'm reading one for these boys that's a Lois Library. This one I wrote, it's World War II, but it's like the so there's no way else.
Well, there's so many different
Right.
Didn't bring it, maybe because I have a notebook. I can't tell you. Taking notes for stuff more. This feels secret.
Perfect.
Nice.
How are you?
Either one of them.
Yes, a lot better.
Too many leaders or too many
Yeah, I think it was before Christmas break. And one of the ones I just probably read, and this one decided to get it. I'm glad to be back.
It's hard at that age, especially if it's not something that it's exciting to you.
He wanted to talk to him about another one he had read, and I said, you know what, he hasn't read that one, we're going to talk to him about it.
I love reading. It's my favorite.
Well, this and I gave him this.
No! Hey, Jill.
Thank you.
My wife and I got our... Yeah.
My year up. Maybe I missed one. Somebody there.
That project, I don't know. Not all of you did it that way. No, not at all. Yeah. I hope it turns out. I know. I don't know if it changed.
Yes.
She's Yes, they did.
No, I it could be a good thing.
That's Betsy. They done.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
Betsy had to go this time too, so they waited mine out.
So I had to take one.
Did you too?
I did, I had 5
Yeah.
years.
And let Betsy have it.
And I had no,
Which is good, because I don't want to get these damn signatures.
but I had a lot
I
of people
put
that
it off
come
and
and
then
my
I
daughter had a lot of
reached
problems.
around. It's a lot easier last time.
We went away,
Sporting events.
but for a couple of days.
Now he's like,
Well, good evening. It appears, wow, that seems
That's
nice
good.
and loud. Richard says that's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. That's much appreciated. It seems to be 6:33, and everyone who is planning on being here at this point is here. So I would like to call to order the 12th regular meeting of the Board of Directors of SAD 52, and if Crystal could lead us in the pledge. That would be great.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first order of business will be to act on the minutes of January 21st. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, accept those under general consent. Communications, Kim.
I
Thank you. I would like to report the retirement of Elizabeth Capon, Green Central School kindergarten teacher, effective the end of this school year. Beth has 30 years in our district. So 30 years of teaching and learning, and 30 years of supporting students in their growth and their social and emotional well-being. So we are really happy for all these years of service that she has given to our district and to our students. And we also wish her the best going forward. But of course, we have her for a few more months. I would also like to report the following resignations. Jennifer Mason, Green Central School Special Education Teacher, effective February 4th of this year. Daniel Labrie, Facilities Transportation Director, effective March 26th of this year. And Dan has, I don't know if Dan's in here right now, Dan has been with us for about 3 years at this point as our Facilities and Transportation Director. And he has done a lot of work around the facility side, particularly this current year with the coronavirus relief funding and doing tons of projects with that money in very condensed timelines. The relationships that he has built with vendors has really paid off well for the district during this time. So we greatly appreciate the work that Dan has done in the district, and we wish him the best moving forward as well. Another resignation I would like to report is Dan Lowell, district-wide part-time van driver, effective January 22nd of this school year. And Amanda Black, district-wide bus driver, effective January 22nd as well of this school year. I'd like to report the following transfers. Philip Provencher, Leavitt Area High School's day custodian, from 9 to 5:30 p.m. to day custodian 5:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. Also, Laura Swift, Green Central School evening custodian, to Leavitt Area High School day custodian, the 9 to 5:30 shift. Also, I'd like to report a correction. At the last board meeting, the board approved the nomination of Amanda Swart, Turner Elementary School Special Education Ed Tech 2. However, she is actually half-time Special Education Ed Tech 2 and half-time regular Education Ed Tech 2.
Thank you. And I would echo Kim's words as well. 30 years is a long time to be in the district, and we certainly appreciate all the work there. And I feel like from a mileage standpoint, Dan's done a lot in the 3 years as well. So certainly, as always, when we have resignations, folks will be missed, but thank them for their service. Adjustments to the agenda, Kim?
There are none.
There are none. That makes that one easy. Committee reports, finance, Yuri.
We have not met.
Not met. PTV, that would be me. So Michelle got all of our hopes up that we had this one item agenda for the PTV meeting. Well, this will be super fast. Well, it was kind of a big agenda item and actually results in a stack of papers like this with lots of pretty pictures on a project that I know everyone is just absolutely excited to have continuing and get underway, wastewater treatment plant. Who knew that that would ever be a sentence that I would say that we're all really excited about the wastewater treatment plant, but certainly we are. The folks from Ray Pierce were with us this evening and described the $8 million next steps on that project. Everything from timelines that stretch from hopeful work beginnings here in March to substantial and final completions in August of 2022, which, again, I think we're all looking forward to. Lots of detail was provided as far as pictures of all of our campus, as well as pictures of proposed locations. So certainly if anyone who wasn't present for the PTV subcommittee meeting is interested in any of those pictures, we have spares and can certainly provide those as well. And Michelle, I'm sure will correct me if I'm wrong, the detailed kind of breakouts of some of the costing and further proposals that the gentleman from Wright Pierce walked through this evening match up well, or just fine. Nobody's sweating bullets over it as far as the amounts that we have used in our bond seeking process. So we're all set there. Michelle tonight was mostly about providing additional details, both of what the timeline would look like and the one sort of technical step that there was this stack doesn't include the 66-page engineering services proposal because, I mean, we are in Maine, so we want to kill some trees, but maybe not all the trees at once. That is a piece of the puzzle that needs to have district approval, Michelle, correct? And then gets DEP approval because we're working very closely with DEP on all of this.
And then if we get signature, and then it would be, they'd be ready to go. They can start working with a verbal, and there's very little risk with that. We've already had the bond approved. We're just waiting for the actual paperwork. It's with bond counsel right now.
So the timeframe that was laid out this evening has a very hopeful beginning of work March 1st, assuming that the district, the board, is okay with moving forward with the engineering services proposal. That goes back to DEP. DEP likes the wording on the engineering services proposal. That comes back to the district and everybody signs on the dotted line, and then work can begin from a more concrete planning standpoint and from a, maybe when the white stuff goes away, some actual additional site sampling to determine if the most appealing site is in fact the most appealing site under the practice field, and various steps moving forward from there. I even have a pretty schematic of it that's color and in landscape mode as well, if anyone would like that. So that a couple of the pieces that were also interesting tonight, it appears that we will have, as I think we had all hoped, several different opportunities to share with the engineers what our needs are as far as physical work being done on the campus and when that might happen. I know there was a little bit of a kind of a sidebar tonight on when some of the work could be done, how early some of the work could be done in order for some of those areas to be usable again by the time we flip the master switch and are all on the new system. So I thought that was encouraging. Other feedback from committee members on the process? I know it was a lot of paper for tonight. So Michelle and Kim, from a process standpoint, I know we don't always take specific board action on a particular piece of a contract process. Is it your impression that you would like to see board action on, yes, move forward with the engineering services proposal, or is that needed at this point? Kim?
So I always like board action to make it official, if the board is willing to take that action.
So the action that the board would take this evening is simply in support of moving forward with the engineering services proposal. Nothing is signed this evening. That simply moves it to the next step of DEP perusal as well. Do we have anyone who would be interested in making that motion? Mr. Gross?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Jessica, second. Further discussion on that piece? If not, all those in favor? Unanimous. And I would say that this is certainly, given the size of this landscape piece that shows all the timelines, this will be a pretty constant sort of stay tuned, and we'll hear more updates on this as the process moves along. And I certainly the committee got the impression that there would be ample opportunity for us to share as we go what we see as either bottlenecks or opportunities to, okay, please stay off that particular area or get that finished earlier if at all possible, kind of things. So that was our one agenda item for PTV. So again, stay tuned for the rest of that project. Curriculum policy, Joanne.
We have not met.
Not Matt. Thank you. Student Representatives Report, Olivia, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. First, I want to touch on a couple current things that have been taking place at the high school, and then I just want to talk a little bit about my experience this year with the remote learning and the COVID restrictions and how that's been going. First of all, Key Club is holding a fundraiser to raise money for their scholarship fund and service project fund. Student Council has finally gotten underway. They had their first meeting this week, so it was good to see that. Planning for graduation on the behalf of the senior class has also gotten underway. And I've heard a lot of feedback from high school students are very happy to be back with sports after a lot of their activities have been canceled, so that's been great to see that as well. As far as my experience has gone over this year, I think it's been an overall good experience with what we've had to work with. I've really enjoyed the smaller class sizes. I think it's made it easier to learn and also get feedback from my teachers. I've also liked the flexibility that going to school 2 days and having 2 days remote has given me around my schedule, about my extracurriculars and how to plan out my week. It's given me a lot more opportunities to do other activities outside of school. I also wanted to touch on my opportunities for dual enrollment. Throughout my junior and senior year, I was actively enrolled in the UMaine and Central Maine Community College early college programs. And I've had really excellent opportunity this year to take part in even more courses because of our remote schedule. I'm going to be graduating with around 18 college courses under my belt at the end of this year. So that's very exciting, and I really want to make those opportunities more aware to other students because it's such a great opportunity to save money and to challenge yourself more academically and just get out there in the college world before graduating. I think it makes the whole college process a lot less intimidating, and it's given me a lot more confidence going forward into my freshman year next year. Yeah, that's all. I think one of the only downsides have been this year is the lack of activities, which really is out of our control. I mean, that's state mandates and the very unique circumstances we're in right now, but overall it's been very good, and I think that the district has handled it really well.
Thanks, Olivia. It's definitely good to hear the student perspective as well, because sometimes we need to be reminded of what that is, because ultimately that's what we're all working towards, is that student outcomes and student experiences. So definitely appreciate the feedback on that. And 18 college credits will be rather handy.
Yes, I hope so. I hope most of them will get transferred.
Excellent. That's great. Non-teaching negotiations. Jessica.
ASME is not met. I don't know about you.
And I think we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but we have executive sessions on to discuss that process for this evening.
We do, for both ASME and DSP.
Great. Thank you. Administrator report. Building principals. Looks like Mr. Shaw is up first.
That's what I get for sitting in the front, so it's me first. I just want to take us a few minutes tonight to address some questions that have come my way and generally update the board as to where we stand just over halfway through the school year. And Olivia alluded to it. One of the things I wanted to talk about very briefly is we are underway with winter athletics, which has been a step in the right direction, I think, for a lot of students. We have a number of students playing basketball, skiing. We had a ski meet. I think we had one yesterday. I'm not sure. And we've had some basketball games started this week. Indoor track is not what I would call a typical indoor track season. It's more of an indoor track workout than it is anything else. There's a lot of weight room action and working out in the gym, but there's no way to have a meet. In regards to some other things, I think you've probably heard me say in the past that given the choice between two bad options, we're left with having to choose the least worst. And I think I might have even said that in August when I was here and talked about getting ready for the start of school. Well, we're still living in a lot of that world oftentimes, and it can be difficult and stressful, and sometimes I'll admit anxiety causing. I'm not sure what's coming next, but I think we're making the best out of it that we can, and there aren't a lot of what I would consider to be perks to the principal of the year, but one of them has been that I've had the opportunity to have some Zoom meetings with the other state representatives over the last few weeks, and we spend a lot of time talking about different issues in each other's buildings and how things are working out, particularly in the pandemic world, and we're actually pretty fortunate because there's a lot of the principals that I've spoken with that they haven't seen any students in their buildings since last March. And that really bothers them. Like, they're still having to do everything remotely, and they haven't seen any kids for quite some time. So when we hear about other areas that are pushing to reopen schools, they're literally looking to reopen and do exactly what we're doing. And so I think it's a good perspective to have. So what we're doing isn't easy, and it's not what we're used to, but it's by far better than where many districts are across the country. And of course, we always want to do better and be better, but maintaining that level of perspective is always important as well. So anyway, as I said, conducting school in this manner is difficult, and we have some students who are struggling, but we do every year. And when we are made aware of these struggling students, we work to provide support to them. So we access both in-school and out-of-school resources when that's appropriate. And this might be working with school counselors or developing some sort of academic plan for students who need it. Or it may even be arranging for some outside school counseling services, if that's the case. The point being that we're here to support kids, all kids, and those who are struggling and those who aren't. So we are working through that. And I am feeling a little left out today because I didn't make printed colored copies of my data, but I'm going to share it with you, I guess, verbally. So we've been looking at some academic data now that we've wrapped up the first semester, and it's difficult to make straight comparisons because our schedule this year is different than it typically would be, but I was able to work with Jason, and he gave me some data that's fairly well aligned, and the numbers comparing the last couple of years to this year, semester one to semester one, are remarkably similar. At the end of semester one last year, just under 26%, so like 25.7-ish% of all of the scores that were entered into Power School at the end of semester one were less than 3. This year, at the end of semester one, 25.3% of all the scores that were entered into Power School were less than 3. And that trend holds true across the board. So for scores that were less than 2 or for scores that were greater than 3, those percentages were almost exactly the same. So I was worried about that because I had this kind of vibe that maybe things were way off kilter, but I don't think that they are. And this is an aside, and I didn't write this down, so it's going to really mess up my timing here. But in addition to the principals from across the country that I've met with, I've been in Zoom meetings with regional principals way more often this year than I've ever done before. And they were talking the other day about they have a grant that they work with, and they have to keep track of failures as well. Theirs are down substantially this year as 2 years past. So I found that to be intriguing as well. So as I mentioned, for those students who are struggling academically, we have supports in place for them. So we have opportunities for students to schedule time for after-school help. We have our Winter Academy, which is set up for next week, and we have a number of students that are coming in to work with staff to either recover credit or build towards earning credit. And that's all in addition to, and I'm not going to list them all off, this list of examples where staff members are setting up individual opportunities for students to receive additional support. Another thing that's come across my desk as of recently, and I figured you might want to hear about it, headline news the last couple of weeks has been that some districts are changing their graduation requirements due to the effects of the pandemic. And although that sounds interesting when you read into it further, that's really not, anyway. But we're not in a position to have to do that. The requirements that are being changed or adjusted in other districts are more often than not community service requirements or participation requirements, which we don't have. And in most cases, academic requirements have not been adjusted. So we're not in a position to need to do that. We do have a small handful of seniors who are at risk of not earning their credits, but again, this is not remarkable, and it's very similar to where we would be any year at the beginning of second semester. So we're working with, and we'll continue to work with those seniors and their families to develop plans for them to potentially earn their credits, hopefully earn their credits before this year ends. Current reality is the school is more difficult this year than what we're used to. I mean, I think we all know that. It's not entirely awesome, and we certainly wouldn't have chosen this route that we're on, but I think we've had to acknowledge what it is and try to make the best out of it and move forward. None of this is ideal, but we choose which side of this mess we want to be on. So positive outlooks and actions can build momentum, but not nearly as quickly as pessimism and negativity. So we have to avoid feeding into that negative momentum and kind of work towards a goal. And so we can hear concerns and acknowledge them and maintain a realistic point of view, but at the same time, we want to be problem solvers and strive to make the best out of an awful situation, which quite honestly I think we probably classify the last 11 months as having that. So having a positive attitude and trying to find solutions to a problem don't make us any less capable of empathizing with the struggles of others. In fact, I would argue that it makes us better supporters for those of us who are around us so that we can help see the issue and find a solution. So I'm very proud of the work that the Lubbock community, the faculty, staff, students, and families have done through what I classify as COVID school. It hasn't been easy, and we have a ways to go. I think if you watch the news, you can see we have a ways to go. But we pulled together and are working toward that, to our this year's goal of providing the best education we can, given the circumstances that we're in. And I've said it before in many settings. I'll say it again today. I wouldn't want to do it anywhere else or with another group of people. So that's my report today.
Good evening. I did pass out a graphic for you. What this represents, when I have extra copies. There's more. So when I'm talking to Jason and talking about what kind of data can we pull together at the middle school, we decided that the easiest thing to do is take this year and the last 2 years and look at just trimester 1 and trimester 2. Because last year, all we had was trimester 1 and trimester 2. This year, we're in trimester 2. So to try to compare as close as possible, this is just reflecting the first trimesters of all 3 years, okay? It's broken down by our grading system. So we have our does not meets, where are 0 to 1.99. Our partially meets that are 2 to 2.59. Our meets, which is 2.6, that's the grade you need to be passing any class, 2.6, up to the 3.49. And then a 3.5 to 4, which are exceeding the standards. So when you look at the graphic, you can see that our does not meet and our partially meets had large jumps up, and our meets had a large jump down, about 5% of the students compared from last year to this year. From 2018 to this year, there's a 7% drop. And our strong students are always going to be our strong students, and those are the ones that exceed the standards. It's about 28% of our student body, and year after year, those are the kids that can learn in any environment. And they're holding strong right where they are, so that's good. So then we have to look back at the other one. Why are our kids meeting the standards dropping and the others rising? And this learning environment we're in this year has been difficult for many of our students. Not having the continuity of day-to-day structure has affected them in a negative way. So we're putting supports out there for them. We're creating Zoom meetings. Teachers are Zooming with them during their prep time. If they're home and they need help, we're Zooming with them on Wednesdays. Every subject area has an hour office time, that if a student is working at home and needs some one-to-one with the teacher, they just contact the teacher through email and they get some time slotted to them. We've been having more parent meetings because for some of our reluctant learners, we're like, okay, you tell your son he now has 8 o'clock for English, he's got 9 o'clock for math, he's got 10 o'clock for social studies, so that the parent is aware. And we're trying to pull the parents in to help guide these kids. You need to go on to your Zoom meeting now, so that they can connect with the parents and the students. We have our after-school intervention or support where students who are in person and need more support after school can go to the media center. And it's very limited because of COVID. In the past, we would have packed it with 28 kids. But this year, with 6 feet apart, we can put 9 kids in the media center for homework club. And that's 1 student at each table so they can keep their distance. So each team can select 3 kids. So that brings the margin down, so they're really choosy on who's going to get the most out of that time. And we have 2 sessions for cohort A and 2 sessions for cohort B. The other thing that we have in place for our IEP students and our 504 students is they can come 4 days a week and get that assistance they need to help them stay on track. So we're making sure that everything is in place to give the most support to all of our students. Our Learning Lab this year, this is the 2nd year with Learning Lab. If you remember, it replaced the alternative classroom. The Learning Lab this year is working with students during their study hall time or anytime they need a little extra support. They're also setting up Zoom meetings with these students so that when they're home, the Learning Lab ed techs will contact them at home. Are you doing your math? How are you coming with this? So we're trying to hit every student to give them the help they need. And the last piece that we're really trying to put in place, and we've talked about it for years and we haven't been able to coordinate how to do it, and I said this year, we've got to make it happen. We've got to get more support for the students. We're going to try to follow the high school model, and we're going to have an April vacation academy. Will be 4 days to have math, and we're focusing on just math and English language arts. And so we're going to have 4 days there for grade recovery, and then we're going to do the same thing at the end of the year. The year ends on the 7th, from the 8th to the 11th. We'll have another academy for catch-up and kind of build some skills before they go off for the summer. So we're trying to put things in place to help our students get through this tough time and keep the communication going so that they are successful at the middle school. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Petrie and I'm from Turner Primary School. And I have a similar graph that Gail shared with you, and it says Turner Primary School at Q2 academic check. I did want to start, the word of the month at Turner Primary School this month is kindness, and we have been asking our students to draft a letter to individuals who have supported their remote learning, and then they plan to distribute those letters over winter break. But I do want to give a shout out to our daycares and all of our community members who have really supported our students through the remote learning. I am responsible for the drop-off and arrival process at Turner Primary School, and every single day parents say, my child asks me every day when they can come back every single day. So the kids are really loving being in school and they can't wait to be able to come back 5 days a week. But a huge shout out to our daycares and our grandparents and aunts and uncles and neighbors and everybody who has really stepped in to help support our students. And I think because of our community, although you'll notice on the charts, some of our percentages of students who are meeting the standards has dropped. I really appreciate how hard our community has committed to education, because I think the drop could be significantly worse if we didn't have such great partners in our community. So if you look at quarter two over the last 3 years, you'll see that the percentage of students who scored a 1, 2, 3, or 4, you can see those percentage points. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with the report card, but a 1 means that a child is having difficulty meeting the standards. A 2 means they're working towards the standards. A 3 means they're consistently meeting the standards. And a 4 means that they're exceeding the standards. So over the past 3 years, as you can see, Turner Primary School has had about 6% of our students continue to exceed the standard. You can see that we have had between 73 and 77% of our students meeting the standards across the school. And then you'll see that working towards the standards, we've had from 14% in 2018 up to 17% in 2020. So you can see that our percentage of students working towards meeting the standards has gone up, and our percentage of students who are consistently meeting the standards has gone down. But once again, it's not significant. So I really want to commend our community for working so hard to support our students on those remote days. I have to tell you, I know I've mentioned that Seesaw is very engaging, but one of the great things about it is students are able to upload assignments and post them on their own, partially because we've done some support teaching them, but also because the families have continued to support Seesaw. So a lot of skills that students need at the primary level, they're actually able to practice those skills through Seesaw to continue to build on them, to keep the momentum going. I do honestly want to share that writing is an area that I do worry about in the future for Turner Primary School, only because Seesaw doesn't, they have little pens you can use, but it's not students drafting stories that go across multiple pages and have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And even though we teach that through our curriculum, throughout the grade levels, I think that might be an area that our leadership team will want to look at. How can we continue to support writing when we return to regular instruction? Some of the questions I get from families are, how can I support my child with their writing at home? And often I invite them to write stories, have the child write about what they did that day, have the child help you make a grocery list of what you might want to buy at the store. So really trying to create authentic writing experiences so that our students are still picking up a pencil, writing it across lines, and then working really hard to make it legible. So, but overall, our students continue to consistently meet the standards. And like Mr. Shaw had shared, we do have interventions in place to support students. We are able to offer 4 days a week for some students in specialized programs. We do have some general ed techs who support the classrooms and provide students with additional opportunities to practice sight words and practice reading books and talking about what those books were about. So we have that going on throughout the day as well to support our students. And then a lot of our ed techs and support staff on Wednesdays, as well as our teachers, are setting up individual Zooming appointments with their students to either check in or practice some of those skills. So we do have some interventions also available for students. Does anyone have any questions about the Q2 academic data over the last 3 years at TPS? All right, thank you.
Good evening, Doug Parker from Green Central School. I was not nearly as efficient with Ryan, so Kelly's going to help me out. I do have a graphic to go through with you tonight. It's very similar to what you have probably just seen. Just a quick academic analysis, 3-year comparison from 2018-19, second quarter, through 2020-21, our current year. And the descriptors are there as well. So if you want to take a look at, we have the 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s over the course of those 3 years. And we're looking at the scores earned indicating a 1, which would mean having difficulty meeting the standard. There has been a very slight increase over those 3 years from 1.58% of the total grades in 18-19 to 2.25% currently, which is a modest increase of 0.67%, not especially high. As far as a 2, which would mean working toward meeting standards, has been a slight decrease in that area from 12.58 the first year to 12.27 this year, which is a decrease, again, 0.31% of our grades. You can see a slight increase, which is really great. 3, consistently meeting the standard, that is. The number of those grades have increased over the 3 years from 76.51% to 78.58, which is a modest increase of just over 2%, 2.07. And finally, 4, which means frequently exceeding the standard. Those grades have decreased from 9.33% in our first year to 6.91% in this year's second quarter, which is a decrease of 2.42%. When you kind of look at the entire piece, there we go. Sorry about that. I think I might have given away one of my sheets. If we look at the 3s and the 4s all together, no, I've got that one. Thanks. You're still in, meeting or exceeding the standard. You're right around the 85% range for all 3 years. So although there are some bumps and bruises in various areas, slight increases, slight decreases, overall, the numbers of scores that indicate meeting or exceeding the standard has been pretty consistent all the way through. But we got to say, as a staff, we do continue to carefully monitor the many aspects of what we call a very unique learning situation, where considering all of the moving parts and significant shifts say a lot about the tenacity and the dedication of our staff, our students, and our family. We have been at it now, and I'm very proud to say that we have some really incredible in-house experts who I think could really do like a seminar on remote learning. It's incredible. We've started with very little, some folks that had very little experience with some of the platforms and have now just completely mastered it and are making discoveries that other people hadn't figured out yet. And so we really have encouraged those people. Sometimes they like to work behind the curtain. We really have been encouraging them to get out there, put themselves out there, and by sharing some of the aspects of things they've discovered, like inadvertently, have made the process a lot easier for students and colleagues. So that has been really incredible. So there's been very positive kind of self-discovery and sharing with colleagues. So there's been a nice collegial pull inward too. So any questions about the data? Go ahead. Yeah.
On all of these charts, is this strictly academic, or is this specials included, such as PE?
I don't believe it's straight academics. Yeah. Yeah. Not to say that the specials are not academic. But yeah, just straight content. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Kelly Marston, principal at Turner Elementary School. So when I gave you Doug's graph, I gave you mine at the same time. So I just want to speak to the data first, and not unlike everybody else who's gone, the data looks fairly similar, typical for the past 3 years. Not a lot of change, but I think it's always good to be looking at the data and kind of keeping an eye on it and see what it's telling us. We do look at it as a staff and think about it, and we look very similar than we have for the past 2 years. And so I think that's good news. Honestly, I was a little bit nervous when I started to do this and see how this was going to look. But it looks good, and it isn't different from what I'm hearing teachers say. So when I love to have those conversations where we talk about, where are kids at in comparison, making those growth between one reading level to the next. At this time of year, like with a third grader, or how many of those levels, how do you feel? And that those small class sizes, I know we've talked about it before, they feel like they're making bigger gains. And it's how, it's just the instructional, being able to have that level of instruction and that amount of the feedback from the teacher, the one-on-one is so crucial for that learning process. So I feel like our data looks very similar. And I did want to share, a couple other things that I think are important to note. I think Evan said school is harder, but it's harder in a very different way. And it's harder in terms of a lot of my work, I feel like, is switched to working just with kids who are hurting, but a lot more conversations with families and with adults who are struggling, and then seeing the impact that that has on their child coming to school. So work is different. It's talking and spending time in different kinds of ways, but it's supporting families. I feel like we're in a community that our kids in Turner are very blessed to have the support from their families, and for the most part, I think most of our kids have really great support systems. And we do a lot of wraparound services. It's very easy to find services to connect families with that will help them. And so that's certainly a plus being in a community and during this difficult time. I often, and I daily walk through TES, and in this time, of course, we don't have folks coming in and out to keep the sanitation being the best that we can. And I often walk through and think, I wish that people could see what's going on in these classrooms with these teachers and the kids, because I'm so impressed with what teachers are able to do under these circumstances, planning for that in-person instruction, and then the online instruction and the dedication that I've seen, and the kids, how much they were responding to it. So having the opportunity to walk through, I feel very, very fortunate. And there's been many times where I've thought, how can we make this so that like people can see what's happening? I have no doubt that we are going to come out of this with some really strong things that have benefited us. As horrible as the situation has been, I see what's happening in education with educators, the conversations that teachers are having, and I don't know how we had ever propelled to where we are now to have these conversations, and I really believe we're going to come out and be better able to provide an education for students that are going to be what they truly need for their future, and in a way, so that I find hope in that. The other thing I think is like super exciting news is, as you know, the Chromebooks, the computers are in, as Randy alluded to, TES got that first batch. We were fortunate enough to do that. And I want to let you know that 250 of the new Chromebooks for students, as of Tuesday, we had them all in 120 forms, and 24 forms have already been collected, and that was just, we had a snow day, remember? No, the remote working day, not a snow day. That was back in the day. I still have to learn that. So 124 have already come back, and so those students have been able to take home their new devices. They bring back the older models that they were using, and I expect that tomorrow many more will go out, and I would think that by the end of the first week, or that first cohort A, everybody will have their new devices, and they're certainly excited about that. We're very pleased to be able to do that and have that opportunity. We've already started talking as an elementary and administrative team about what elementary teaching looks like when you have one-to-one devices in your classroom and how that can enhance instruction. So those conversations about professional development and how we're going to continue to grow have already started happening, and I think that because of our experience that we were kind of thrust into, it's made for a lot of really great thinking to be happening. So it's an exciting time at the same time while it's difficult.
Go past it. Yes, the nine were up there. Less than 9 were up there, but.
Sure.
My colleagues to work. Hi, I'm Danielle Harris. I'm principal at Lincoln Central School, and my graph is coming. I want to thank Ryan for creating the original graph where we just each had to plug our own information into. We saved us a ton of work. And I want to thank Jason Breton as well for pulling this data out of our school, because when we first heard that we needed to report out this information, I was a little nervous because I thought it was going to take me hours and hours and hours, but Jason worked his magic and did the calculations for us so that we could just come and report out how things are going. So it is a little disappointing to look at my graph, because you can see that the 1s and 2s have gone up slightly over the last 3 years, and the 3s and 4s have gone down slightly. I do have to remind you, we're in a pandemic, and people are still trying to manage everything that's going on in their lives, so it doesn't look quite as pretty as a couple of the other schools here, but I also think that it's amazing that we're doing as well as we are in the middle of a pandemic. And I know that parents and grandparents and daycares and caregivers are all working as hard as they can on those 3 days a week when their students are receiving direct instruction. And that's where our struggle has been, really. We are doing amazing things on those 2 days when students are getting their instruction, and we're struggling a little bit with making sure that the students understand that school actually is still 5 days a week. Some kids and families have kind of expressed that they think school's only 2 days a week, and if that's the case, if they approach it that way, that's going to definitely affect a child's education, their progress, and I think that's where we're seeing this little dip. So I'm hoping that maybe third quarter will be a little better, because my staff and I have been working really hard on the ones where the kids were struggling to not do their work on the remote days, and trying to find solutions to any of the barriers that people are facing in getting that done. So again, it's a tough time for some people still. We forget that this has gone on so long, it almost feels like it's normal, but it's really not, and people still are struggling. And so I'm looking forward to learning how important my administrative team is and what great supports we are for each other. And we always wish we had more time to talk with one another, because we have such great things to share. And whenever we do have our Zoom meetings and we talk, we come away with, oh, I wish I had more time to talk to you, because that was so great what you just shared. Now I can take that and use it in my school. So I think we will be having lots of those conversations as we move on and figure out how we're going to pull some silver linings out of this situation. Because I think there are a lot of great things going on that are going to actually impact us positively in education in the future years. So that's Leeds Central School. Any questions? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm not a building principal, but I have been asked to speak tonight. I'm the Director of Special Education, Rebecca Drysdale, and I'm speaking to you tonight regarding the age of eligibility for special education. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what this means. So typically, the ages for special education range from 5 to 20. And on January 21st, 2021, an administrative letter was sent to all Maine public schools regarding the change of ending age for special education eligibility. So I'm going to read just a little bit about what this letter said to public schools. It says, Maine will implement the federal standard and provide FAPE to eligible students until their 22nd birthday. This change is based on a statute which resulted from a systemic complaint in Rhode Island. The First Circuit Court looked closely at Rhode Island state laws regarding adult education and concluded that those state laws make clear that public education, which includes adult education, was not limited to when students turn 21, but actually continued to be available to older students through public education programs. Therefore, the court ruled that the federal standard would govern the age of eligibility for special education in Rhode Island up to when students turn 22, or until they receive a regular high school diploma and meet their individual education plan goals. So I will note or let you know that this is an administrative letter from the Maine Department of Education explaining the change and why, and it was effective immediately. At this time, the regulations have not been changed to reflect the eligibility to age 22. So what does this mean for us in our district? Well, it's important that I let you know that students receiving special education services will continue to receive a regular high school diploma, and they will continue to work to meet their IEP goals, which ends our obligation to provide FAPE, special education services. So our IEP team meetings will continue to meet annually to discuss IEP goals, graduation requirements for students at the high school level, and they will determine as teams when they'll meet those graduation requirements and their goals, and what year that will be. So to support this extended age limit, the Maine DOE has work groups from multiple stakeholders to further explore the implications for districts, and we'll be learning a lot more about how to best support our students moving forward. Are there any questions?
Would you email question whether that can be done?
I did, so this includes all that information. Yes, it's a combination. All right,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Your question?
Does this impact the minimum age as well? I don't know.
Can you say that again?
Is it still 5 years old, or does this impact the minimum age as well?
That's an excellent question. So right now, it's just impacting up to age 22. The DOE is also exploring with the legislature again, plans to expand the age range down to 3 to 5. But that's not happening yet.
So from an operational standpoint, does this really change anything right at this moment? Or are there work groups exploring exactly what this is going to look like for folks?
So the work groups are exploring that, but what that means in terms of fiscal, right? Fiscal implications, what that means for adult education implications, what that means for students attending essentially a high school for up to 8 years, what that would look at caseloads as well for those teachers, what is going to be different for those kids in 8 years and getting them ready for transition. So those are all areas being explored. And like I said, it's also not, it's there, the DOE is moving forward with this, but at the same time, we're also along the way receiving legal guidance about what this means, because it's not in the regulations as of yet. So that will be added. And then districts, we are exploring at this point, like I had shared, our students do receive regular high school diplomas when they're ready and they've met graduation requirements. We don't have alternatives at this point, so that's an area that we'll look at as well. But most of our students are graduating with a 5th year of high school to meet those requirements and then transitioning to adult services. So we'll be examining that as well in our IEP teams with students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thanks for that. I'm sure we'll do more.
Yes.
And thanks for all the specific information that administrators provided tonight. It's easy to get caught in sound bites, and certainly appreciate everyone's acknowledgement that what a bizarre 11 months and what a tremendous amount of effort this has taken for everyone, from our families at home to our teachers in the classroom to all of you administrators leading the work. So again, thanks for providing specifics, and I think we'll all look forward to brainstorming and hearing all the good ideas moving forward into what, I don't want to jinx it and say normal someday, maybe less abnormal. I don't know. Anyways, but thank you for continuing that work and for bringing us what some specifics look like around that as well. Kim.
Thank you. So The Western Maine Superintendents Association sponsored a virtual legislator coffee and conversation meeting on January 25th. I worked with a small group to plan what that would look like, and we thought we were very clever because we sent $5 gift cards to Dunkin' Donuts so that people could get a cup of coffee for the coffee and conversation. We had Vicki Wallach from the Maine School Management Association. She talked first for a little while about some of the bills that will be in front of legislators this session. And then 4 different superintendents spoke about COVID impact in different areas in the school. So one of us spoke about the human resources and the impact of the pandemic. Another spoke about teaching and learning, student learning impact. Another on what things we're learning that we might want to continue doing after the pandemic is behind us. And I spoke to the group about the financial impact of the pandemic. So after that, we broke out into smaller groups, just share information and answer questions. It was a really good opportunity to connect with some of our legislators and also to give them some information. And they gave us good feedback about that, so they felt like they learned some things that they were not aware of before. Both of our representatives, Thomas Martin and Josh Morris, attended, which was great to have them there as well. As you know, we have posted for the Tripp Middle School principal position, and that application deadline is March 1st. I will be reaching out to TMS staff soon to take a look at our current job description and see if there's anything else that is going to matter as criteria as we begin to put together an interview committee for that new position. Where's Gail? Yes, Seth. A little sad about that, Gail.
I wish I could say the same.
On opening day every year with staff, we recognize years of service, and it's actually it's a nice part of the event. So people who've been here for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20, 25 years. And it's nice to recognize those people with those years of service with the whole district here, right? It's just a pleasant activity. It always goes a little bit long, but it's just nice to see where people are in their careers in the district. And we have some people who've been here a long time, which also I think speaks well to the district. We were unable to hold that event, obviously, this year. And I had great hopes that maybe this spring we would be able to get together to celebrate those years of service, which was, it's always good to be hopeful, but it's not going to happen. So the administrative team has been thinking about ways to honor people for their years of service this spring in some other way. And we've had some pretty creative ideas. I'm thinking, I know Gail and Danielle had mentioned perhaps we would take people who have 5 years and we do a little conversation with them and send that video out to staff 1 week. Another week it would be for the people who have had 10 years of service. We talked about having a Zoom, but a Zoom with 407 people doesn't feel very personal and feels kind of long. So we thought this way, smaller clips that were a little bit more personal and that people could enjoy every week or every other week might be a way to recognize and to honor those people for their years of service. So more to come on that. I did appreciate that Isaiah Davis had already contacted me because Evan had mentioned that we were thinking in terms of what we could do, and Isaiah let me know that Buzz Media stands by, ready to help us with whatever we want to do, whether that's video or Zoom or anything else. So I do appreciate that. So congratulations to LAHS art teacher Iva Damon, who has been nominated for the 2021 Androscoggin County Teacher of the Year. So very exciting and very well deserved. There is a rigorous application process that's involved, and I'm certainly hoping that she will go forward with that process. It is truly an honor to be nominated, right? That is a huge honor. So we're really excited for her, and again, it's very well deserved. Kelly mentioned that we have finally received the Chromebooks that we've been waiting for months upon months upon months. And she mentioned that they're already working on distribution. Both LCS and GCS will also be working on distribution very soon, slightly after vacation, right? So this is going to be fantastic because for grades 3 through 6, we were patching together anything we could find around older areas and then asking families to support students with home computers, home devices if they had them. So now we are finally at the place where we have those Chromebooks in, and our students will all have a one-to-one with a new and good device. So this is all really exciting. It's going to be a big step forward for everyone to support learning. Randy has been working on technology infrastructure as well, and he has had vendors in here doing work in all of our schools in central office. I think actually the high school is the last school that will have the switch over, and I think this maybe happen this week, sometime soon.
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, okay. Next Wednesday. So I can't tell you how many, it was very, speaking just for central office, it was very on devices for students. We don't have the right infrastructure, right? Now we're finally at the point where we are getting rid of some of those barriers, and that's going to help a lot with support for students, both in class and also remotely. Teresa is holding the first meeting of the newly formed re-entry team the Monday after February vacation. And that team is going to take a look at our current reality, what is working well for students, what is working well for teachers and staff, what are the challenges that remain, and then what can we do about those? How can we improve learning for those students who are struggling with the remote part of learning? How can we support staff with all the responsibilities that they have around teaching 4 days a week, plus all of the remote lesson planning that they have to do, and the checking in that they do, and the office hours with parents, and all of the things that are part of their regular responsibility now. So we're very, very excited to take a look at, again, where we are and what we might be able to do. You have probably seen either on social media or in the media that there are some districts that are starting to take a look at Wednesdays and the possibility of bringing some students back to in-person instruction on Wednesdays. It is a complicated puzzle to solve, and a lot of superintendents are doing a lot of talking about that. What can that possibly look like? How are you making that work? We've got to make sure cleaning is being done, etc. But this team as well will be talking about all possibilities going forward. Now, we are in mid-February at this point. We recognize that as well. And we don't know what next year is going to look like, but we do want to be proactive with our thinking about what might work under the current requirements that we have, right? The distancing and the mask wearing and all of that. So that would be fantastic. More information to come, updates will be coming regularly on that. Evan alluded to the fact that that there are a lot of students in the country who have not had any in-person instruction this year. And so I actually looked up to try to get some numbers, and what I found is that it's about 20 million students across the country have not been in classrooms this year. And that represents over a third of all students in the US. So when you look at that, it gets back to what Evan said about perspective. We've been doing well. Do we want to do better? Yes. Is this as good as 5 days a week in person? No, of course not. However, we do have kids in for a couple days a week, and we've been doing that all year, and we will continue to do that. And I think of all the children who have not stepped foot in a classroom since last March, and that's shocking. So the administrative team has been working hard. We have been looking towards developing the FY22 budget. We have been looking at projected enrollments. So principals are talking to families who have chosen to homeschool their children or to send their children to a private school for this year, to have that conversation about whether that is going to be an ongoing thing or whether some families are choosing to do that during this year, during the pandemic, and who we might expect to come back next year. We are assessing class sizes. We're looking at student-teacher ratios. We've had a long time in this district of highly valuing class size that is good. It's on the smaller side, and that matters to us. And we are looking to keep that in place as well. We're also looking at what do we have for staff needs and student needs, and what might this look like. We did get our ED 279, and we see that we have about a $429,000 decrease in subsidy this year. We dropped, as far as our October 1st count, in enrollment by 90 students. So as you know, EPS, Essential Programs and Services, which is the funding formula we use here in Maine, they take the average of the last two October 1st counts. So the one from 2020 that we just had shows 90 students decrease. And then average that with 2019, and that's how they judge what our enrollment is. Something important to keep in mind is that this will not have an impact just for next year, but for the following year, because that lower number will then be averaged with next year's October 1st count to determine what enrollment will be for the following year. So if we don't end up with 90 more students back or more, we definitely know right there that there'll be a change. We also know that for this year only, teacher-student ratio at the elementary school was reduced from 17 students to one teacher to 16 students to one teacher to try to offset a little bit of the impact of that enrollment. Our valuation didn't change all that much, and how that played out for our towns was almost exactly the same as this current year as well. So we continue to look at those challenges in front of us, recognize that we had a decrease in subsidy, of course, contractual obligations, which are negotiated salaries and benefits. Every year those increase, so we're aware of that, and insurance costs increase as well. So again, we're doing a lot of work to see exactly what we need and what we can do, and we will be presenting the initial proposed budget to the school board on February 25th, which is the Thursday after February vacation. Okay, Dan's still here. Dan is here. So we have some old radios now, and RCM, the company, says they're worth about $5 a piece. I know that Evan is planning to repurpose those to use for sports at the high school. Gail, I think you're going to do the same thing, to repurpose to use for sports. Elementary principals have been deciding what would be the best case to use them. And I think, by the way, Doug is shaking his head at me, that there's an interest in just donating those at this point. So they don't have value to them. So per policy DN, which is about the disposition of things that we don't need and don't have worth, we would look to donate them. Danielle, you had a particular place. Where was that?
Monmouth Theater.
Monmouth Theater.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Another thing for the school board to think about is that the ability to go forward with a virtual budget process like we did last year exists again for this year. So that's been extended. And if you remember, last year we were meeting virtually anyway, and then we held a virtual budget hearing, and then the budget vote actually happened on July 14th. So the governor has extended it so that we could do that same process this year if the board decided they wanted to go that way. We've been meeting in person, and I'm hoping that we can continue to do so. We would have to assess that by like March 18th, I think is a board meeting that we have, just because we'd have some plans to make if we were going to do it virtually. Oh, so Dave Roberts told me that the USDA has provided some money to fisheries, and as a result is offering free fish to school districts. We have received pollock fillets that Dave already used once in fish chowder, I believe, and got good reviews. And we'll be having Parmesan encrusted fillets at the middle and the high school. When is that, Dave?
March.
In March. So that'd be a nice change, and we like fresh fish for free. So we, as you know, we've had coronavirus relief funding. We had CRF1. We have spent all of that money. We had CRF2, and we spent all that money. And we have CRF2 Plus, which we are taking a look at now, which we believe has very little money left in it. We do have ESSER2, an ESSER2 allocation. For our district, that was $1.1 million, and we already have some very good competing priorities for that money as well. The focus for ESSER2 is around they're calling it student learning loss, so recognizing the support students are going to need to make gains in the learning. It's also focused on student needs, and it's focused on ventilation systems. So you will hear more from us coming up soon about that. We did meet with Siemens today to talk about where we are in the district with ventilation. We're actually in very, very good shape there, but again, more information will be coming. Olivia, I had you in my report, but you already spoke. Thank you. And I think that does it for me, Betsy.
Excellent. Thanks for the updates on all the large number of things that are going on at this moment, and continue to keep everyone busy. Maybe that's an understatement, but busy. Anyways, that brings us to public comment. Any public wishing to comment? Yes.
I'm not sure if I missed it because I had a hard time hearing, but I'm just wondering where we are with the plan to open the schools up full time, like what the target date is and if the money that we've spent from COVID relief fund has been spent in order to open the schools up for the kids.
And actually, if you could introduce yourself too, I mean, I'm terrible at, if you could introduce yourself as
Oh,
well.
I'm sorry, I'm Barbara Swan. I have a student that
Thank
goes
you.
to Levitt High School.
I can't tell who anyone is with these masks on anyway, so, I mean, that's my excuse at this point, but thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, I'm just wondering where we are with getting these kids back to school.
Kim, would you like to
Sure.
touch on that? Thank
Sure,
you.
sure. So at this point, we have the requirements, the Maine Department of Education and Maine CDC requirements. We have to keep students distanced. And so part of the reason that we're in a hybrid model in the first place is because we don't have enough space to have all of our students back in together and meet those guidelines around the distancing. So that's why we have cohort A in for 2 days and then cohort B in for 2 days. Okay, how far back do you want to go all the way back?
She can't hear you.
Yep, I know, I thought I had this on. Okay.
Hold it closer to your face.
Okay, the masks make it so hard to hear everything. Okay, I'll just repeat. So, part of the requirements from the Maine Department of Education and the Maine CDC are that students are distanced. So part of the challenge for us is that we don't have the physical space to have all of our students in school at the same time and have them distanced per those requirements. We just don't have enough room to do that. And that's why we have cohort A in for 2 days and then cohort B in for the other 2 days, for that reason. Right now, those requirements have not been lifted. They're still in place. So we won't be able to have all of our students back for 5 days as long as those requirements are in place. We are taking a look to see what more can we do to support students? And is there a way to provide more in-person instruction? We can't have everybody in, but is there a way to increase that in some way? So we're going to be assessing and seeing if there's any way to do that. I'm going to hang on to the hope that next year we could be back as normal, but things are coming up now in the news that are making it sound like we're not sure if that's the case or not. So we're watching and waiting. We all want kids back 5 days a week. We miss the kids. It is much easier to have our students all in class 5 days a week. So we're all looking forward to that. But right now, that's not a possibility.
So the only thing that's really holding us back is the distance?
We don't have the space, correct.
Have we thought of renting other space? You know, portable classrooms and things like that, with the auditorium and all that stuff?
So the part that goes along with that is needing more teachers to do that. Right, because you have only about half of the kids are with a teacher. So we need double teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know, I just was wondering where the money that we received went to, like we use the federal money or the state money to hire more teachers and portable classrooms.
Right. So you're correct that the money is for impact from the pandemic, from COVID-19. Up until recently, that money had to be spent by the end of December. And so the idea of putting positions into that meant that at the end of December, that money was gone. And there wouldn't be money in the general budget to pay for the rest of the year for those teachers. So money was spent on all the distancing that is required. So there's been so much impact and cost. And I can certainly give you some ideas if you'd like a list of that.
No, I just you guys.
Oh, okay, okay.
So is the distancing 6 feet or is it now 4 feet?
So it would be 3 to 6 feet, but it's got to be 6 feet anytime anybody has a mask off. So anytime you have a breakfast, a snack, water, a lunch, any of those things, you have to be 6 feet apart, and that makes it challenging.
Do we have the possibility of, on the 2 or 3 days that the children are not in school, that they can be watching and involved in the classroom via Zoom?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on those other 2 days, they can actually, they have to be there and they can participate in the class via Zoom?
Yes, so that's a great question. So a little earlier, I was saying to the board that when we got started in August, we were saying, well, we don't have any technology, what do we need? And so we identified we need one-on-one devices for students. We also need better devices for teachers to be able to support that. and we had all kinds of infrastructure problems. So now we have addressed, the high school's about to get theirs taken care of, but all the other schools have addressed the infrastructure, it's better. So we've taken care of that barrier. We now got the final order of Chromebooks in for our grade 3 through 6 students. Those will be getting out in the next few weeks, and so then we'll have the one-on-one device student that we've been looking to. The last piece of that is like an AdPro or a Logitech type of camera that can follow the teacher as the teacher teaches. And actually the tech director is sitting behind us back there, and he and Teresa and I are actually meeting next week to talk about what that would look like and how could we fund that, so that we could consider having some more of that, what you're describing, for students being able to join a live classroom for a period of instruction time.
So that's like a future consideration, it's not something that could start right away.
Well, we don't have the cameras yet, so we have to get those, but it's something that we are interested in looking at to move forward toward. I do know that there have been a few districts, some districts have not done it all because of technology, and there have been some districts who've been trying it. It's not as problem-free as you might imagine that way. However, everybody is saying, okay, how do we get there? How can we use this to further support learning and to have more of that live contact more often during the week?
Thank you. This Zoom really isn't a great idea. I mean, I have a child in college that most of her classes is Zoom, and it really stinks, but I just thought it might prompt the kids to do their work more, if they had to be following the class and that sort of thing.
So I agree that it's something that we'd like to look to getting toward. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
These are all great questions, and I'm certain that you're not the only one that has those very same questions, and I think it's important to keep those conversations moving and understand, as I think our administrators each kind of commented on earlier, where we are today looks a lot different than what it did the end of August when we went back to school, and I think there are some things that we're doing today that we wouldn't have imagined then, and other things that we still see as really huge opportunities, because there's no question that there's a lot of challenges to this, both for our students and certainly our families that have made a lot of changes in their schedules perhaps to make this work to the extent that we saw in some of those achievement numbers earlier. So definitely lots of continuing conversations and still lots of uncertainty as well. I mean, I wouldn't say that there's anybody's crystal ball that's quite as clear as I think we'd all love for it to be, to have a specific date where we could be back to something that looked a lot more like normal. But thanks for asking the questions, and certainly we'll continue those conversations. Brings us to old business, which I don't believe we have any of. Consent agenda. We have a motion for the list.
Yes.
Richard. Do we have a second?
Second.
Crystal. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Brings us to new business. 9.1 is to act on the list. Still think that should be of continuing contract teachers who will be issued annual salary agreements for the 21-22 school year as presented by the superintendent of schools, and to authorize payments of salaries.
So moved.
Richard, do we have a second? Crystal? Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Brings us to 9.2, approval of Kids Heart Challenge fundraiser for Green Central School and Turner Primary School.
I move that this be accepted.
Thank you, Richard.
Second.
Second for Yuri. So, discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. 9.3, approval of donation of used refrigerator to the administrative/adult education office.
So moved.
Richard? Do we have a second? Crystal? Discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous? Brings us to 9.4, approval of $1,000 from Murray Hughes Oil Company.
Accept it.
Do we have a second? Thank you. Discussion on this one? All those in favor? Unanimous? It appears that the rest of our laundry list for this evening consists of executive sessions. Any other orders of business or items that we need to discuss prior to launching into those? This one that our faithful audience will exit. Yes, Richard.
Today I went on my computer and watched Kim's little presentation aimed at staff at all levels. I was very impressed, and I think we need to be doing more of that. Thank you very much. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. If there are no other items that we need to cover, I would take a motion for 9.5, and that's an executive session to discuss the Tri-Town Education Association, and the balance of the executive sessions for anyone watching at home do deal with negotiations for TTEA, for AFSCME, to discuss compensation of employees, and to discuss duties of officials / appointees / employees, and to discuss the superintendent of schools evaluation.
So moved.
Richard. Do we have a second? Crystal? All those in favor? Unanimous?